Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel. Today, just a little bit of an announcement before we get started. Just to let you know that I've been a big proponent of simulcasting over on Twitch, YouTube, and Discord. Now, normally we gather together at the Discord server over at Fantasy Grounds College. I'm here to tell you that today will be the last day that we will be doing it over there specifically, but the boiler room is not going away. There is the RPG with DBJ Discord itself that is located in the data below on the video. Just go over there, and tomorrow and thereafter we will be gathering there. This is an indefinite change. I'm not sure if and or when this will change in the future, but just be aware that this is the situation going forward. Now, let's get into the subject. For those who are new to the channel, or this is their first time seeing this, we take a subject, we take that subject, we talk about it all week long, and we deep dive into it an hour a day each day, subdividing it based on the day. Today is Monster Monday. We also have Discord Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, and Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday. And this week, I thought we would talk about plants. We've been on and off talking about the various creature types in our favorite the most popular RPG in the known world, Dungeons and Dragons, and it is often used as a placeholder for many other role-playing games as well. So I thought we would go back to it and pick plants. And actually, it sparked my information because the latest cover of a magazine, The New Yorker, has an excellent picture of a young lady. Looks like she's dressed in a very puffy fur coat, but you realize the coat is actually made up of pollen from a dandelion, and it looks really cool. Anyway, for me, a lot of times, whether it's you guys or something I've seen or heard or what have you, it will spark something. I thought we'd go back to our rendition of using plants. Now, with Monster Monday, of course, is very general, whether we talk about NPCs, adversaries, true monsters, or the monsters within humanity. But plants tend to be they are far more both unique and broad when I gave it a little bit of a look. I tend not to do a lot of research when we do these deep dives because I like to speak extemporaneously, speak off the top of the head, and talk about these subjects. And it made me realize that for plant-based NPCs and adversaries, they run all over the place. For example, plants can be pretty much mindless entities, okay? And plants can be very much environmental effects, traps, locations, stationary dangers that you may run into, such as player characters moving through a dense jungle and a man-eating plant or living vines or something of that nature reaches down for them. They could be going through a vast field of pollen and bright colored flowers that might be dangerous or something. And pretty much plants are very easy to place into locations as an environmental effect. Also, their size is very mutable based on the situation, from little tiny fronds, even something as simple as moss of some sort or fungus, all the way up to the most massive plants and trees we've seen, including fantasy trees such as like world trees, people that live inside of trees that could be very many miles tall and broad, and even those trees may be alive and give up some of their capabilities to the people that live in and around the plants. Plants themselves are easily a stand-in for giving things to your players, whether they are potions or scrolls or magic items or little gifts here and there, boons that you want, whether they are seedlings, sap, leaves, nuts and berries, fruits, and those kind of things. Even going so far as to have what's the druidic ability, the good berry, even having natural growing good berries into a fey forest of some sort. Maybe there are particular types of resistances that people can find by scavenging the bark off of particular trees, or forging arrows and bows out of particular types of woods. And in most of fantasy, there's always been the gathering of natural herbalistic items or things needed for an apothecary, for cures or remedies or something of that nature. And even having not just to gather those things and using them in their natural form, such as digging for roots or fruits or berries or seedlings or something, but maybe there's another process that you need to go through in order to cultivate whatever it is, whether it's drying these particular things using a pestle and mortar, or steeping them in a stew or something of that nature. Now, plants also run the gamut of personality and alignment, right? Many plants tend to be along the neutral range as well. Wow, Dead Man puts in World Tree, an anthropomorphic RPG. Wikipedia, the World Tree, the role-playing game. I did not know well, I couldn't say I didn't know there would be. I didn't know of one, but it's pretty evident that you can easily find one like that with with people living in a giant world tree or something of that nature. Attributes. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Now there is oh wow. That's a bit of a side note. The magic system reminds me of Ars Magica, where you combine a verb and a noun to find out what it is you can or cannot do. Verbs such as creation, destruction, healing, knowing, changing, controlling, and permanence. Yeah, the creoc is creation, and then you pick a noun like air, air, water, liquid, animal matter, locations, magic, minds, and combine the two together. I've always liked that idea. I've always liked that process of mixing and matching verbs and nouns to make your magic system. And I can see someone else took that. Not sure when that was created. Now, something else plants do. Oh, 2000, maybe 2000. Okay, the plants, while they tend to be in the neutral state, seem to flow into a, like, based upon the situation kind of thing. So, for example, a corrupted dark wood would tend to have plants that tend to be far more aggressive and dangerous. Either the plants themselves are evil, or they are aggressive and dangerous based on the circumstance that they live in. With this dark corrupted wood, all the plants there are dark and corrupted, although they might just be victims of circumstance. There's also the idea, yeah, Omen says, or evil looking at least. Yeah, of course you have to have the stereotypical tree with the tooth-filled maw in the middle of it, But plants come in all different types of shapes and sizes, right? They're not just trees, whether they are innocent-looking bushes or vines or fields of flowers. There are also various different types of trees themselves, whether they are tall spires like more of a redwood tree, or maybe evergreen style tree, or more of the squat knotted trees which are begging for you to climb up inside of them. Yeah. Yeah, and of course there's the dead trees, right? Like Omen says, in SCP Foundation there were trees that looked more like emancipated corpses than trees. Yeah. Oh yeah. A dead wood or trees that look like, literally look like, they are almost like skeletal or zombified human beings sticking in and out of the ground. There's a series by C.S. Friedman known as the Cold Fire trilogy, and in that there was a dead wood basically of trees that were very closely related to like bone, and the woods would put you to sleep, and as you fell asleep, the these bone-like tendrils would grow up through your body and basically use your body as a way to feed the trees. And so, over time, if you look closely, you could see the rib cage of dead people in the rooted system of the tree. But there are, honestly, the number and amount of things that you can do with plants is pretty interesting. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons really started itself out with a lot of like fungoid plant like adversaries and NPCs, much like the Myconids and the Vegapygmies and various other plant related animals that existed through each edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Some of them advancing forward through the editions, others being a one and done. And plants tend to be those things that are like, they are. I was just going there, Omen. Omen says there were also the plants in H.P. Lovecraft's Color from Outer Space. I was going to say plants are very much related to a Lovecraftian horror type of thing, because having multiple limbs, having an alien nature to them, being privy to things around us, they are like the plants tend to be the thing that's ignored until it begins acting on its own, and then it makes you realize that how pervasive are the plants. And even in comic books, Swamp Thing was known as in more modern storytelling, was related to divinity and near godhood in terms of its capabilities in it being able to communicate and survive for long distances. I mean, over long periods of time, and communicate over long distances. Wow. 6 a.m. in the morning, but guys, sorry about that. Tesla Ranger brings up poison ivy is borderline. Superman borderline plant, I guess plant like. Oh, because Superman is photosynthetic. Yeah, we tend to different stories bring that back up, but yeah, Superman is a photosynthetic being. Of course, poison ivy has always been around for a long time, and different iterations make her closer to or further away from being a plant-based being. In Depending on who's written her, she's either just been just a scientist who has control over plants, or is literally a plant-based individual. I hear you, Owen. A busty plant, yeah. Yeah, Swamp Thing, Groot. Of course, Groot. Exactly. The Forest of Kem from Doctor Who, and Zaan from Farscape. I forgot about Farscape. Yeah, so there's so many things you can do with them, and as well as the fact that, much like Groot and other plant-based beings, that simply hacking into them or burning them or things like that, they are both vulnerable and invulnerable to some of the dangers that humanity is vulnerable to. Meaning, like, for the most part, burning a plant tends to be the thing that they are vulnerable to, if not equally vulnerable to as much as a human being being caught on fire. But also having the ability to live longer through spreading pollen and seed, much like Groot, and cultivating them. Also, plants tend to be a really good ally to other beings. Fey creatures are one of the first things that come to mind, but fey creatures or more naturalistic allies, ones that live out into the wilderness, and whether they are forests or jungles, hell, even broken desert-like landscapes, there are plants such as like cacti and tumbleweed and things of that nature. So, yeah. Tesla Ranger puts in something from Pathfinder. The the Goron, the Al Renums, the Al Ronis, the Leshies, and the Green Men. Now, Pathfinder says the Goron are what happens when a food crop gets magically experimented on until it becomes uplifted and humanoid and starts demanding equal rights. Yeah, exactly. Like they knock on your shoulder while you're eating corn, and then you turn around and you see a brightly yellowed face or something there with a little cone shape to it, and you're like, sorry there, buddy. Alrons or Alronis are large, intelligent plants with secondary bodies resembling green-skinned women inside their main flowers, and use a combination of attractive smells and sex appeal to lure in humanoid prey. I was going to bring that up, the idea that like plants don't need to have such a strong relationship to humanoids, meaning that plants can be gestalt creatures, much like intelligent plants with living beings inside of the flower, where the flower opens up and someone walks out of it, but the flower itself is also a gestalt portion of the animal, I mean, of the plant life being, so that animals, we may consider the person that walks around that's very attractive and seductive to be a separate entity, but maybe they are not. They are like hive minded, and so they don't need to be a humanoid. They could be quite alien. And plants tend to have lots of secondary abilities that are unexpected as well, much like the pollen and pheromones, the attractive scents that come off of them. Many tend to be, Tesla says, all wrong. Yeah, it depends. How do you know? They don't really exist in the real world. Omen says they were inspired by poison ivy, or poison ivy inspired by medieval. But yeah, Googled it, whatever. You came here, buddy. No, I'm just joking. But in all honesty, based on what types of ways you want to incorporate plants into the world, they don't necessarily need to only be in the wild. Having them in a major city makes a lot of sense, especially if you have a noble or a rich merchants with a very large place that they go hunting, a protected grounds, or well-tended garden that's tended by druidic like priests or something like that, or someone who has traveled the worlds and has collected it in their museum or in their zoo, or again their gardens, these exotic plants that come from very far away. Or the plants could be trying to infiltrate a location based on where they're going. Sweet poison O2. Yeah, we're talking about poisons and things like that. When it comes to plants and plant-like creatures, a lot of them tend to have either airborne abilities like pheromones and pollen, something that can choke you. They also having poison, the ability to poison others either through like sharp barbs or spikes. Thinking of a rose bush where it has sharp thorns on it as well. But plants also can have other magical abilities, especially if they're Fae related. Having a Fae relationship tends to be something that's pretty common in fantasy. So having some other mystical ability to hypnotize or entrap, or even be a locus for going from one dimension to another, is also a commonality. The Alruns sound similar to the plant creatures from the series Lex, Lexx. She was a carnivorous plant who assumed the form of a woman from the ship's captain's dreams. Yeah, the idea that plants are body snatchers or doppelgangers, or that they somehow have a relationship with time and energy, meaning like someone goes into a dark wood and they fall asleep for 100 years and wake up later on, or that there's a fey wood that has been enchanted where you go into it and have months of encounters and leave it as if you've only been in there for 5 minutes. That tends to be a thing that's related to plants and plant life. So they're pretty amazing. I mean, even the idea again of a rich noble who has a well tended garden and has these special flowers they pick each day and attach to the lapel of their jacket or their cloak or something that has some kind of special abilities is a trope that is very easy to use and insert into a game. Yep. Omen brings up the Ironclaw RPG. They also have similar body snatcher plant monsters. As a matter of fact, that game has a lot of plant monsters. Yeah, they're pretty ubiquitous when you start to think about it. Like, wow, there are a lot of plants. Sweet Poison 02 says, awesome. My high elf rogue, ooh, lost it a little bit. Actually hybridized a specialized poisonous flower, which has a unique poison that no one but her has. And see, that's a thing, right? I mean, plants even allow us to very easily reskin, reflavor many capabilities that maybe our player character has. Like, oh, maybe my magic missile isn't really magical or missiles, but they are like thorns or spikes or something I fire out of my hand, or I can just my cloak is made out of leaves or something, or my character has the ability to blend in with the environment using like a blur or an invisibility spell, but instead it's reskinned as like flavor in being a plant related individual. Very much like using like a misty step, where instead of teleportation you turn into leaves and you just get blown away in the wind and reform your body somewhere else and stuff. Pakaha says, I remember my friend once suggested to me as a GM a carnivorous rooted plant that grows in a desert that floats above the ground and attracts prey with glowing roots, then drops down and feeds. Yeah, I mean, you can, because plants come in so many, like an near infinite shape and variety, you could easily come up with plants that do many things, whether they float above the ground and kind of drift on air currents, whether they are very subterranean and reach up through the ground to the surface realm, and you can place them in any region, whether they are literally in the Underdark, the subterranean realms, and their roots reach down from ceilings, or they tumble across the ground, or they are like seaweed in the deep oceans, or things like that. So using them as flavor, and also using them, again, mentioned before, as environmental dangers, especially plants. The less a plant moves, the more it probably has some ability to lead errant stragglers to it, as opposed to it going after something. Most of the plants tend to be pretty immobile, or at least slow moving, although, like treants and vines and things like that tend to have a large reach. But reskinning other creatures in your monster manuals, and reskinning them as plants works very well. Like an aboleth makes perfect sense as a plant-like creature rather than an aquatic creature, and with its tentacles being like roots, its maw being something that can eat things, and its psychic abilities, remaining as psychic abilities or being a side effect of its particular capabilities. Now over here on Twitch, Sweet Poison says, the face stuff of vanishing for 100 years and it feels like a minute to you, and also the months and it's actually a short time, is my country's mythology. So I get you. Oh yeah. So exactly. I mean, how many fables have we heard where, whether it's a cautionary tale about going off by yourself into the woods, or watching out for being swept up in your emotions by chasing a beautiful, significant other out into a woodland area and disappearing for a while or falling asleep or something. I mean, yeah, and so what? It's been used before. We can use it again and again, right? By the way, for those of you out there, this show is simulcast over on Twitch, YouTube, and Discord. So I'm reading comments and watching people interact on all three platforms. So if there is a preferable platform for you to interact with the show, you could pick that as well. Omen goes on to say certain deep sea creatures in real life, like anemones and I'm going to butcher this one, siphonophores are kind of plant-like anyway. I know I butchered that last one. But yes, many like coral reefs and things of that nature, you have a lot of plant-like aquatic things out there. I mean, heck, you can go to your local aquarium and look at one of those saltwater tropical fish tanks, and you'll see attached to the coral reefs like a lot of these plant-like abilities. Siphonophores, okay, or it could be yeah, I'm pronouncing it siphonophores but probably putting the wrong emphasis on the improper syllable, but whatever. Sweet Poison says she's a noble lady and has a big greenhouse. Everyone thinks she's wasting her time with the pretty flowers, as they have no scent and they don't realize she bred them to have no scent or taste. Okay. I made a mushroom that is in the Underdark. If you disrupt them, they release spores that make you sleep for 18 hours. One of the most common BX basic Dungeons and Dragons creatures was the Screecher, and the Screecher was a mushroom that if you passed by it, it would, well, screech. And of course, it was a Gygaxian creature. It was one of these things that basically, if you saw Screechers and you disrupted them, they would increase the chances of random encounters with monsters. And so that was the point that they existed. Since then, Screechers have kind of faded out of existence, since random encounter tables have kind of faded out as well. But again, like a mushroom that comes by that has spores, a plant that makes a sound or releases a scent or draws in predators for due to some other mechanism, or basically they're alive, like myconids, the living, walking around mushroom capped creatures or something. Yeah, biological alarms are a good thing, and as a matter of fact, even creatures without intelligence, but they still have instincts, would become BFF with a lot of plants and things. I mean, even in our natural society, right? That there would probably be, say, alligators in a swamp that happen to have a mutual understanding or hunting method with alligators and maybe some other living dangerous creature in and around them, right? I mean, imagine going into a jungle and then the jungle plants block the method for the PCs, the adventurers, to leave, and then the waist deep water has these dangerous alligators there. Both benefit probably from being near each other, even though they haven't had a conversation about doing so, right? Much like so many predators can blend into foliage in their environment, so too would the dire versions of these same animals and predators, right? I mean, we're talking in a fantasy realm, having much like carrion birds like to hover around the fresh kills of other predators. The same can be true for plant-based adversaries. Yep. Deadman says Eclipse Phase has Screechers by a different name. Yeah, the other thing that's really cool about plants and such is that you can make them really insidious, especially if, say, some kind of like pollen or spray gets onto the player characters, and over time for a short period of time they don't realize what's going on, but as time as they get more and more information, maybe they realize that the yellow or red or purple color that's on their fingertips or in their lungs or on their backpack or something has some other kind of secondary effect, whether it is drawing predators or making them smell a way that allows other predators to track them down, or marks them as enemies through other plants in the region, because that might be the way that the plants are able to communicate, or that the spores are a way for the plants to keep propagating, keep growing, and if they land somewhere, they can yet grow again. So you could even with plants, you could have an invasion of sorts with plants, but not in a traditional alien invasion or goblinoid invasion, but a world in which maybe humanity lives in these small towns and are trying to spread into a wild region, but they just seem to not be able to spread far enough because the plants keep overgrowing darn near every trade route or something. Would be a pretty good story type thing. Maybe we'll talk about that on World Building Wednesday. We'll get into that. Pakaha says African, I think it's acacia trees, releases poison gases when threatened. The having a world where we use our plants and such, whether they are a natural part of the environment, meaning like they're not sentient in the least bit, I believe is a really good way to. It's a halfway point to get into using the third pillar of the third pillar of gaming. I'm a big proponent, as you longtime viewers know, I'm a big proponent of using the third pillar of exploration and using the environment as a way to complicate, to increase dangers and tensions as to where the PCs are and what they're doing. So, for example, a pretty boring fight would be the PCs going up against, say, an ogre or hill giants or something like that. Increasing the tension would be the players go up against them, say in a jungle or a swamp, knowing that if they get close to these other plants, that one or more random things might happen to them, so that it might be a matter of using tactics and movement and things like that to either stay away or even get some of the adversaries to fall into some of the dangerous plants. Let's say they're to the north are assassin vine like plants, and then to the south is something that spews out spores that put you to sleep, and to the east there are plants with very poison, extremely sharp spines that if you just brush against them or pop them a little bit, they'll pump some kind of like venom or something into your flesh. And to the east there's roots that reach up from the ground and will entangle your legs or something, right? And being either by choice or force pushed into or moved or convinced to go into that region might increase the danger there. Or maybe a player character decides to try to navigate through the dangerous area to be tracked by an enemy, and then watching the enemy get caught while the PC slips, dodges, and runs through maybe a dangerous place with plants. Rickard says an old one, but this brings up my old Styxian flesh blight. Yeah. Anything named Styxian flesh blight is sounds pretty bad. Yeah. Any plant that that grows in such a deep and dangerous and dark place like that, pretty bad. And as a matter of fact, I thank you for having me segue into that. Plants that come from different regions in the world, meaning like, I don't know, a portal opens up from the nine hells. What kind of plant lives down there? Maybe we don't want to know, but if those beings bring those plants or those plant-like things with them, it could be pretty dangerous. So plants that grow in pretty hazardous locations might have themselves specific abilities, meaning like plants that are hardy enough to grow into Arctic regions might have you could reskin them to have some sort of cold resistance or some kind of cold damaging effect. The same would go for a place that's in a desert or some place that's burning or whatever, and maybe the plants have some form of resistance or ability to cause harm. They might even be like flame trees or something like that, or trees that cause them some kind of electrical arcs, or hell, even a dense wood during a thunderstorm that are drawing lightning bolts down onto the trees and maybe even the PCs, or causing the trees to fall over or something. Now, when it comes to sentient plant beings, the cool thing about plants is that their motivations may not run in line with either the enemies of the PCs or the PCs themselves, right? Lots of plants want to defend their grove, the place they live, and so they might be adversaries because the PCs might be trudging through their homeland, or they could very easily flip over and become an ally based on the plants, right? Whether it is keeping enemies away from the grove, or returning some sort of MacGuffin to the planted location, whether it's a particular type of nutrient or a captured Fey individual, or some other mechanism that the plant-like creatures want that might be kind of odd as a PC. Like, wait, you want us to bring you like 5 tons of like topsoil? And they're like, don't make fun. You guys like to eat too. And they're like, I guess we can go get 5 tons of topsoil. Where are we going to get that? Oh, I know, we can get that from compost. And they're like, have we ever carried 5 tons of compost? I don't know. Maybe we can go get it. That seems kind of odd, but even for like a low-level group of player characters, finding 5 tons of compost and bringing it, yeah, Tesla Ranger's like, wait, how many tons of guano? Right, but pretty interesting, right? Like, I guess we can go get this stuff and bring it to you, and of course the player characters, it's disgusting. Not even valuable, but just might be just plain old disgusting for them. But maybe, I don't know, wyvern dung, or griffin dung is really good for the roots, and maybe they have to go gather that kind of stuff and bring it to the plants, and they're like, oh, that feels so good. This is going to tide me over for another 150 years. Yeah, just rub it down in my roots, right? And then maybe they become allies of the PCs for whatever reason. Also, there has been there has been the idea of plants having like their own network of communication, meaning like all grass communicates with grass of the similar type, or all evergreen trees are able to communicate. That might be a great way for the player characters to earn some form of special information in this world that you have as they move along. Sure, the evergreen trees may not get up and start walking around, but there's like probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of evergreen trees. And if they all kind of communicate with each other, maybe there's some information the players can garner from it. Yeah, Omen says, I wonder if Wayne Enterprises made its first profits off of guano. I mean, it would make some sense. Yeah. No wonder the butler Alfred's always pissed off because he remembers being knee deep in bat guano trying to scrape the stuff off the floor and the walls. Yep. Tesla says dragons crop dusting. Yeah. It depends on how good or bad that sounds. Although, I suppose for like fey dragons, crop dusting would be a thing in a good sense. Red dragons in a bad sense. Yeah. Yeah. Don't get hit by when a dragon's flying over. It has to pinch a loaf. You might not want to. Might not want to be under it. But the plants are like, ooh, the red dragon's got the Hershey squirts today. This is awesome. Yeah. But although being silly, this is also a great way for the player characters to be tied maybe to a particular location. Like maybe today in this particular game, you want to spotlight the druid, and maybe this is one of the things the druid must do every equinox or solstice or something like that, and the circle of druids all scatter around to say, hey, we're going to plant one tree for every life, every year we've been alive on this world or something. And so the druid, who's 28 years old, a human, goes to want to plant 28 seeds or something, and all the hilarity that ensues when they confront other adversaries that are basically telling them, please don't do that. You're just encouraging the plants. Rickard says, uh, yeah, Omen's like plants, hooray, chocolate rain, yeah. But Rickard says, there is some evidence that suggests that all plants of a given species do communicate with one another, but the information is more info about environment and such. There's also some evidence for secondary memory. That is true. Like, it's not that the player characters may be able to get a conversation about things. Maybe all of their words and images are only about the environment, meaning like they really don't consider humans and humanoid beings, meat like beings, to be a thing. Maybe they only communicate when it comes to weather and the ground and the soil, and the player characters may still, it's like they get a clue, but they're going to have to piece the clues together, because they're like, hey, have you seen the goblinoid army? And the plants are like, I don't understand, but I do. My fellows remembered being cut down, and so many impacts upon their roots that they no longer will live, and they must spread their spores or something. And the PCs are like, I wonder if that means the goblin. Yeah, because the goblinoids will probably try to chop down the trees. So, okay, show me where give me location of where your fallen friends have fallen, and maybe we will collect their seeds and spread them to distant lands or something. And then that's how they become allies in this particular kind of thing. Yep. Oh, look, it's some weird human who's come to pee on my leaves. Yeah. Uh, oh. Do you move away from the mic to breathe in? Not well. It's my microphone. I'd be breathing in my own spores as we speak. I suppose if you use a public microphone or somebody has a podcast, I suppose you'd wanna like wipe down the microphone a little bit or quite a bit. So yeah, I also have one of those a pop shield. I stopped using it because it was muting the sound quite a bit, but I do have one of those as well. But the other thing that's really cool when it comes to using plants as in your game is that you can really play with like heights and space, meaning like you could have a forest that's so dense, either by natural ability or maybe through the moving of the plants, that makes a forest so dense that ranged attacks only have a limited amount of range, or maybe everyone in the woods has cover because it's so densely populated, or maybe even like opportunity attacks have some kind of disadvantage, or maybe are useless because every time you go to turn and twist in the thick woods, it's very difficult to maneuver around in. Could also be a way for like a druidic or ranger type character to modify the region with, because let's be honest, there are a lot of plant like abilities. What's a couple that come to mind, like a fog cloud or an entangle spell or something like that, and maybe they are in your setting, they are twisted in different manners based on where they're located, or that they are extra effective if they are in the region that they are adapted to. For example, the jungle ranger's ability to create like entanglements or fog clouds or something is really good in the jungle, right? Like the fog cloud might just be fog that lifts from the ankles and starts getting thicker and thicker, and it just happens to be a natural part of the region, or whereas maybe the ranger in the desert might have like a sandstorm, and instead of entangling vines, maybe they are some types of dead roots or cactuses or something like that. And Tesla Ranger says in the Weird West Deadlands, even the tumbleweeds are out to get you. Yeah. In I guess I'll show it. In the cinematic environments book for Plains and Grasslands, there's even tumbleweed that will like, and I'm pretty sure. I'm going to guess this is the same because I've never read the Weird West for Deadlands, but the tumbleweed actually grabs you and keeps tumbling away, and so you can get snatched up inside of it and get blown away on the wind, maybe even tumbling towards a cliff or a raging river or something like that, which would be kind of funny. Yeah, and anyway, Tesla Ranger goes on to say tumbleweeds are vicious critters that look like tumbleweeds, the dried plants you see blowing across the desolate desert plains. They attack by rolling into a victim and entangling him in their thorny branches. The thing's mouths and spiny thorns then penetrate the skin and drain the prey's blood. Tumbleweeds usually travel in packs of 3 to 6 for more efficient hunting. Hungry tumbleweeds stay well away from any prey carrying fire. They burn like dry tinder when they haven't fed recently. A tumbleweed that has just feasted looks like a pile of wet, bloody seaweed. Tumble bleeds. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty nasty, and I love it. I love it a lot. Especially because, like I said, plants don't necessarily need to be relegated to only forests or only jungles. And as a matter of fact, we know that plants grow not just horizontally but vertically. So, for example, the player characters must scale a cliff face. Who's to say that there aren't living plants that are stuck covering the sides of cliff faces or down a chasm or a ravine of some sort, or that I don't know, the player characters must convince a treant to fall across a very deep ravine so they can cross across its body, or that a dying treant that has fallen over because of a disease that has swept through the plant life is desiring a cure from the PCs that can be, if not for itself, to save its fellow other treants from some kind of ravenous disease or something. Or heck, even you can even triangulate this with plants being assaulted by something that eats plants, like waves of swarms of insects that are maybe like locusts or something of that nature that are sweeping through a region, and that diseases and insects are sweeping through the dark woods or something, or the woods, and maybe that's what's causing the woods to become darker. Or maybe the plants are just like, you guys don't care about us, so why should we care about you? And PCs are like, I didn't even know this was going on. Sorry about that, buddy. Yeah, maybe we will bring an herbalist and find a cure for whatever. Now, plants as adversaries, when it comes to them being intelligent, is actually a great thing as well. I mean, you know, whether they are your simple myconids or vegapygmies, or you have decided to make more of the fey creatures more plant-like. Like, for example, like dryads and other fey creatures are, again, a gestalt version of plants or what have you. Or maybe you've decided to reskin, reflavor, reuse some of those monsters, like aboleths, or what's a good creature to reskin as a plant? Like, the first thing that came to aboleths, because I'm just remembering the A's, because I was going to go through the alphabet, but I suppose something like Otyugs would work. Trolls would work. I think a troll makes a perfectly acceptable plant creature. Of course, reskinning what it looks like, but the fact that it heals very quickly and is vulnerable to acid and fire makes a pretty good example. Ricker says, did we mention the Warhammer 40k orcs? Seems like a legit plant monster. Yep, absolutely. Heck, just giving anything green skin and making it photosynthetic would make a perfect plant-like creature, whether you just go, oh, the orcs in my game, you know, of course, talking about orcs in 40k as well. Yeah, the orcs in my game aren't predatory creatures that eat, you know, they kill humans, but they don't eat them. They actually are plant-like or something. You could reskin hill giants or what have you as such. Yeah, yeah. Dead Man said the 40K orcs are fungi. Yeah. Although they do photosynthesize. Yeah. Yep. And why not? I mean, that could change their behavior. Maybe they are very nocturnal, but during the day, they tend to sway with their eyes closed, absorbing the sun, and that's where they're most vulnerable. But it might also be very culturally a faux pas to be aggressive to them during the high noon hours as they absorb the sun. Yeah, Rickard says, yeah, fair, not plants, but close. But again, we're the scientific differences between like fungus and moss and certain types of plants really doesn't. I mean, it may matter in a scientific manner, but how you use them might not matter, right? Like how depending on your creativity, how closely related they are to one type of plant life over another might change how you want to reskin them in the game. But, I mean, I suppose you could have different breeds of intelligent creatures. Some of them may be more spore like in their propagation. Others might be more rooted in the method in which they absorb nutrients and travel around and move from place to place as well. Yeah. So again, like using plants as adversaries is great, and as a matter of fact, making them quite intelligent is a great way for them to, like for example, let's go back to the troll that's a plant, right? Maybe killing the big bad is actually worse than trying to make friends with it, or at least figuring out some other way to destroy it because maybe it has spores on it, or maybe it's going through a transition where it starts to spread its seedlings or its spores throughout, and so the barbarian wants to go over and hack at it, but one of the other PCs is like, "You need to stop doing that. All you're doing is just spreading a fronds all over the place." And of course, maybe it has some other side effects, like I don't know. You add to a treant some kind of like adhesive ability, so when you cut into it, sap starts pouring out of from the bark, and if you strike your weapon onto it, your weapon or your hands might get stuck to the sap that's coming out of it. Or maybe after you kill some of these creatures and you collect some of the plant matter, that's the equivalent of you giving out like the equivalent of like potions or boons or something like that. Like, oh, once you've killed it, if you are able to carve away its bark, you can turn it into some kind of like the equivalent of, say, scale mail or something like that. Rickard says, I also have a theory that dwarves are fungi. The beard is the mycelium and the humanoid body is the mushroom. Ooh, I like that a lot. I've even heard of people talk about dwarves like when they die they turn to stone. I could imagine dwarves when they get older, they become more sedentary, like they move far less until the one day when they pass away. They actually don't fall over and pass away. They just stop and they become like statues, or maybe they become plant like or fungoid like their bodies. It is preferable to have their bodies decompose by becoming more of like a fungus or a moss that's down in the underdark or something. I could imagine those same dwarves having a symbiotic relationship with plant life as well. Yeah, Rickard goes on to say, and that's why it's so horrific when they have their beards shaved. Ooh, that makes a lot of sense as well. Very much so. Yeah, yeah, dead man. We're gonna uh since we're getting to the end, just as a reminder to everyone that the the Fantasy Grounds College Discord will be ending, and we will not be going to the boiler room over there. We will be using the boiler room over at the Discord server that's just made for this channel, RPG with DBJ. So I will be pushing over people over there to the Discord channel. So feel free to join there tomorrow. And again, just as a reminder, I will the boiler room here will be going away over at Fantasy Grounds College, at least for the foreseeable future. Might be some changes in the future, what have you, but who knows? Now, as we go on for the rest of the week, we can talk about like the kinds of adversaries we want as plants. They can be the main focus, or maybe even they are the thing that changes the course of the other thing. Meaning, like the goblinoid hordes are, of course they're bandits and they're attacking people in roads. It's got to be very typical with this, right? But maybe you've thrown a monkey wrench into it, that it's very difficult for the authorities to go after them. They run out into the woods and they just disappear, and come to find out, they've made some form of treaty, or they've combined together with some kind of plant-like adversary, and the adversary could care less about the goblinoids. All they want is for their planted world to be left alone, and maybe one of the orc chieftains or what have you has combined so many disparate tribes together, and this is the way that they're going to dominate the landscape, but it's because this individual worked with them. Or maybe the plants are just using them as a yeah, thank you, dead man. Yeah, maybe they're just using them as a proxy. In a proxy war, right? The plants are tired of being cut down because of all the wars happening between the humanoid lands, and they're just like, look, if they come back here one more time and cut down our brethren, and here they come with their big battle axes, or their hand axes, chopping them down to be used as mulched into paper and building materials and things like that, and they're like, oh, if you do this, oh, I'm so sick and tired of this. And maybe who knows, they could be mind controlling the orc chieftains, to get them to combine together to cause the war between the goblinoids or something, which would be kind of cool. Yeah, Rickard goes on to say, quote, the goblinoid hordes we could have handled, but they became infected with the Trolucina fungi, and they're turning into a troll horde now. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. They are slowly mutating / evolving into a different species because of how long they've been infected with the plant spores. I'm liking that a lot. Ooh, yeah. Heck, there might even be, much like a zombie infestation or like a vampiric infestation, there could be a plant infestation where people are getting sick, and as they begin to succumb to the infestation, they become plant-like, like literally roots start growing out of their body, and limbs start punching out of their chest and things like that. Or maybe people start wandering in the streets and they start coughing up like green spores, and everyone's like, oh, don't stay away from them, remember we joked around about the idea that like oozes are gestating inside of the pits of the stomachs of people, randomly. Maybe this is some kind of infestation that's making plants grow ever more in and around and such, Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, Omen, you're going off to work, and we are coming to the end of our the end of our broadcast. But again, I just want to remind everyone that the Discord server at Fantasy Grounds College will be coming to an end, but Discord will not. Just go over to rpgwithdbj.games/Discord, and you will find us there. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. We will continue our talk about plants the rest of the week. Tomorrow is Discord Tuesday, where in general we start talking about mechanics, but it's pretty much it's up in the air. We basically talk about anything. Of course, we have World Building Wednesday and Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday. And then remember to join us for Future Friday, where we talk about Eclipse Phase, Altered Carbon, and all things tabletop RPG related to transhumanist gaming. So guys, thank you very much for joining me. And if you don't mind, go over to Twitch and become a follower. I would really love to become an affiliate so that I can make this bring to you an ever greater professionalism and maybe just a greater look. Give you more for what it is that you want. So guys, thank you very much for joining me. I will see you later. Bye.